Hello there, my name's Angela. The National Churches Trust have asked me to produce a series of videos to help the people that care for churches produce better photographs of their church and ultimately get more people exploring churches. So most of the advice I'll be giving you today will apply to most makes of camera and most models of smartphone. If you want very specific advice for your particular model, I suggest that you go to Google or to YouTube and you search, but you also search for the most recent articles, and you can also search specifically for videos on Google to find very, very graphical, very easy to understand help. So one of the best bits of advice I can give you, which is often overlooked, is take as many photos as you want. If you want to get one good shot, consider taking 10 photos, maybe even more. You can take as many as you want to get that brilliant shot. So take close up to your subject, take far away, portrait, landscape. Take a view from above, take a view from below, take a view from very much on the floor. Try every angle possible. Then when you get back, have a look at the photos, do a bit of editing, see which one's absolutely best for your purpose. Don't limit yourself to one shot. So for me, the difference between a good photograph and an amazing photograph is often light. The right lighting can just make a scene magical. Now, when you're photographing a church, obviously the church is going nowhere, so it's worth returning at the time of day when the light is perfect for the feature that you want to highlight. So find the time of day when, say, a stained glass window is beautifully lit up. Find the time of day when your interesting stonework on your wall is perfectly lit, and return and take the photograph then. Take your time over this. So church interiors generally look absolutely amazing with a side light, which picks up all the features. So find the time of day when the light is coming in through your side windows and pick a good sunny day, obviously. So when you're feeling more confident, you can experiment with taking photographs of your church interior with the inside lighting off. If you have good bright sunlight outside, you'll get a fantastic effect, a contrast between light and dark that will make for a very dramatic image of inside your church. If you edit this photograph to be black and white, it will look timeless. So when you're photographing people and movable objects in your church, it makes a lot of sense to actually move them to where the light is at the moment. So just moving them into the light from a window gives you the light you need to take a great photograph. With people, if you have light that's falling onto their face, that generally is quite flattering, or a side light. What you don't want to do is have the light behind them because that will put their face in darkness. So when we photograph something, we tend to focus on the centre of the image, and it's quite easy to not check the rest of the image for clutter and for things that look a bit messy. So when you are framing a photograph in your phone or in your camera, before you press that button, check all four corners of the image to make sure there's not a little bit of litter, or you've not got a wheelie bin poking out the side of your church. And also when you're photographing people, you tend to really focus on their faces and try and get them obviously to smile. And then you can often not notice there's a plant behind their head which is giving them horns or making them look particularly silly. So again, when you're photographing people, just look over the top of their heads and make sure there's nothing in the background that makes them look like they've got horns. Okay, so the subject of your photograph is the thing that you really want the photograph to be about. And it's often the case, again, that we focus on what's in the middle of the subject without just checking the edges to make sure they're all okay too. Now, a very typical example of this with a church is that we make sure we get all the church in the picture, but we don't actually check the tower and actually check the spire. And often we can cut that off. And then when you get back, you can't use that photo because the story is incomplete. So again, before you press the button, check the edges of your subject and make sure everything is included in your frame. So most modern smartphones and digital cameras are very good at focusing at close objects. The problem some people have is they don't know how to tell the camera that that is what they want to focus on. By default, a camera or phone will try and focus on what's in the middle of the frame. And often you don't want to do that, particularly if you want to make a more interesting shot. The same applies for exposure, and it refers to how much light is allowed into your lens. And the camera will again automatically expose according to what it sees in the middle of the frame. Churches in particular create a challenge here because we often have beautifully lit windows and dark interiors, so it can be difficult for a camera to cope with both of those extremes. So we have to help the camera or the phone out by saying, This is where I want to focus, and that is what I want to expose for. And I'll show you how to do that now. So churches can pose a real challenge when you're trying to expose for areas that have bright windows and dark interiors. So again, what you can do with most smartphones and most digital cameras is you can tell the camera where you want to focus and expose for. So if I tap here, that puts the window into perfect exposure, but we've lost the rest of the room. If we go down here, you can see we've got the rest of the room, but we've lost the window. By the way, on digital cameras, if you half press down the shutter button when you have the item in the center that you want to expose and focus for, that will have the same effect. Now with back to smartphones, with most smartphones, you can tap to say that's where you want to expose, and then you can slide up and down to adjust it ever so slightly, and then you reach a point where you feel you've got enough detail in the window and enough detail in the interior. Often though, with this kind of photograph, you do have to make a choice about whether the window is going to be the main focus or the interior, because it's very hard to expose for both. With most smartphones and digital cameras, as well as telling them where you want to focus and expose for, you can also lock that position. So for example here, I think the end of this pew is very interesting. So I'm going to press and hold. And can you see it says auto exposure, auto focus lock? So that camera is going to stay locked and exposed on that. And perhaps I want to have that in the background, or perhaps I want to take a photo with that in the background. But for each photo, the focus and the exposure stays on the pew end. Again, with digital cameras, if you put the item that you want to focus on in the center of your viewfinder and you half depress the shutter, you will get that lock facility as well. So you might be really surprised how close you can actually get to a subject with your smartphone or digital camera. And when you've got a church full of beautiful, intricate objects, you want to get as close as you can to reveal that detail. So take this mosaic here and this lady's face. I can actually get extremely close and still, if I tap to say there to focus, and still have the image in focus. And this is a much better way of photographing this mosaic close up than standing further away and zooming in. Most digital technology, particularly smartphones, if you use a zoom, all it's effectively doing is cropping into the photo. You're not actually using a lens to get closer. Obviously, for safety reasons, you sometimes can't get that close to an object, but it's still better to just take the photo and then crop it afterwards if you want to. And you will be surprised the detail that you can go to. Camera shake is another problem that people often get when taking photographs. And it's particularly a problem in low light because the camera has to stay open for longer, allowing the shake to have more effect. There are quite a few ways you can reduce the risk of camera shake. Firstly, don't hold your phone and camera far away from you because that increases the likelihood that the shake will happen. So hold your camera and phone nice and close. Tuck your elbows into your body because again, that also helps you to be stable. And remember that now you have screens on cameras and phones. You don't need to put it through the viewfinder like you did in the olden days. So you can just hold it close to your body, check you've got the image you want, and then hold it really steady and close and take the photo like that. Another tip that a lot of people don't know about is that on smartphones, if you're taking a photo at an unusual angle like that, you can use the volume switch up or down to take that photograph. So you don't have to struggle to try and reach the shutter button as well as holding the photo that you want. That can even be done with headphones that have a volume switch. So you could have your headphones down here with your volume switch and take your photo, and it's just a lot easier. One of the best ways to reduce camera shake is to allow the camera time to take a photo. So you line your shot up and then you hold for a second, you take the photo for a second, and then you hold for a second more before you whip the camera away. Sometimes the camera may still be taking the photo when you whip it away. So just leave it there, just for a second, so it has time to do everything it needs to do. Another really good tip is making use of the stable surfaces in the room that you're taking the photo. And the church has quite a few of these to go at. So obviously you have a pew, which gives you a great stable surface to reduce camera shake. Or you can have the side of a window or a door frame, which again gives you a really stable surface, and you can take any angle. And often, by being forced to make use of these uprights to give yourself a stable shot, you end up taking an unusual angle that you may not have considered before. So you get a very interesting photo and you get a stable photo. So pretty much every camera and smartphone does have a grid available for you to use, which divides the image into 9 squares. This is incredibly helpful when you're trying to avoid doing photographs that are just ever so slightly wonky. So when you line up an image using your grid, pick a dominant straight line and then use the grid to make sure that that straight line is either directly vertical or directly horizontal. You may perhaps be doing an image with an unusual angle, which is a good thing because it makes for a more interesting image, but it's still a good idea to pick one of the lines in the image and make it horizontal and vertical. And then the person viewing the photo knows that the quirky angle is deliberate and not a mistake. To find out how to switch the grid on for your particular device, I would recommend that you do a Google search with your particular model. But most smartphones and cameras do have this grid available, and it's hugely helpful for taking better photographs. My next piece of advice, which might seem counterintuitive, is to pretty much switch off the flash most of the time that you're using your smartphone and digital camera. The built-in flash can create a very harsh picture with hard shadows behind items, and it can also bleach out a lot of the detail that you might want to get. So I'm just going to take a couple of photos with and without flash of this font here to show you the difference. So that was with the flash, and then if I switch the flash off, and I'll just use the font to hold the camera super steady, and I take the photo again, the colours and the detail are much richer on the photograph without the flash, making use of the fairly good light here within the church. This is especially true when you want to get close-up details of objects, particularly objects like carvings. So as a general rule of thumb, don't use your flash.